Hey, I realized, until today that the last thing I posted was, talking about how, you know, a mob invaded the presidential palace, the Supreme Court, and the Congress here, in all those buildings here in Brazil. And that was like, what, 4 or 5 days ago. And that's the last thing I put. So I thought maybe I should give an update of, you know, what happened. And then also, by the way, my longer video of why I think going to church as a brand new believer is dangerous. Why it's a dangerous idea. Um, I re-uploaded that finally. It took me 5 days, and I even had to cancel the upload because it failed the first time, and I had to re-upload it again because I deleted it by mistake when it was originally uploaded. Because of this kind of glitch on my iPad, but it's uploaded again now. But it took so long. That's why I don't make super long videos. It's because it takes so long to upload the long videos out here in the country. Sometimes it takes days, and sometimes it just doesn't work, and you have to retry again and stuff. But anyways, um, you know, so that video's up. But so what happened here in Brazil? Since when they did it Sunday. Okay, yeah. You know, a bunch of people got arrested immediately. The media is calling them terrorists, which I think is actually accurate. Um, and I don't think it's over. Some people in the military were involved, and in the military police, they're also involved. Um, so there's like this massive investigation, and they're some of these people were definitely funded by some, you know, fascist Brazilians living in the USA. Like, and the ex president of Brazil's in Florida, and he might either be extradited or have his passport canceled and be deported back to Brazil, because he still refuses to concede, and a bunch of the people on his side, and even people that are in Florida right now, like ever since the guy lost, you know, they've been calling for basically a coup, like pretty openly, and basically if they can't achieve that, like a civil war. So, you know, yeah, they definitely need to be arrested. Of course, they're terrorists. And what makes me really sick about all this is that a lot of the Bolsonaro supporters, like, they always want to talk about how they're like they're just patriotic Christians that just want what's best for the country, and you know and so a lot of people, when they think, like in Brazil right now, when they think of somebody who says they're a Christian, they literally think of a terrorist at this point. When they think of evangelical, they think of just crazy person that wants a dictatorship and that's willing to commit terrorist acts for it. And some of you may not know, but you know, in the '60s, Brazil had a military coup that lasted for 20 years, and for those 20 years, Brazil was ran by a dictatorship, by military dictatorship. And, you know, some of the generals kind of switched off of being president, and they try to pretend like they were still doing democracy and stuff. They still had elections those 20 years, but you know, it was a dictatorship. The elections were all rigged. You know, everything was like predetermined. There was no freedom of speech. You know, the military got away with whatever they wanted to get away with, and they literally tortured people. Okay, like brutally that complained, and you know, and then you know, eventually when they realized that the world was getting more interconnected, and that the world was becoming more appalled with what was going on, and then you know the Brazilians were protesting for freedom and stuff. You know, they basically allowed democracy to return on the promise that, or you know, on the condition that that basically they would not be punished at all for what they did in those 20 years. Okay, and you know, some of the tortures were absolutely brutal, and you know, some people disappeared. Also, some people got just executed during that time, and you know, Bolsonaro, the guy who just lost, he thinks that was like the greatest moment of Brazil was during the dictatorship. I mean, you know, he's on TV. You know, there's clips of him saying that he's in favor of torture. Him talking about that, like that the only mistake of the dictatorship was that they didn't kill more people. Okay, just all sorts of like weird garbage. Like the, you know, we had a former president after the dictatorship that it was, you know, it was Brazil's only woman president, but she was she was literally tortured during that era of the military dictatorship, and you know, Brazil had this political scandal and stuff some years ago, and when Bolsonaro was in the Congress, you know, he voted to impeach Dilma, who's, you know, the lady who was the president at the time, and you know, he dedicated his vote. Like, he went on live television during the vote, right? He dedicated his vote to the general that basically ran the torture camp that had her tortured. So, you know, Bolsonaro's a pretty sick guy, and he's pretty open about that stuff. I mean, he's, you know, there's clips of him on TV saying that, you know, and mind you, sure, yeah, they were from some years ago, where he's just yelling about how great the dictatorship is, and he's in favor of the dictatorship, and he hates democracy and all this stuff. You know, he never backtracked or recanted on that. Like, that's what he still believes. Okay, and you know, and because the, you know, the constitution that exists in Brazil, you know, it's from 88, 1988, not 1888, not 1788, 1988. Okay. So this form of Brazil's republic is still new. You know, it's only 6 years older than me. Okay. And a lot of people still remember what the dictatorship was like. And it still leaves everybody with a bad taste in their mouth. Right? I mean, look, they did some messed up stuff during the dictatorship. And look, and Bolsonaro's pretending to be this defender of Christian values. You know, during the dictatorship, some of the things they did, for example, was, you know, they would just taser people's genitalia just for fun. I mean, there was one torturer where he would literally sodomize people with a rat, which is, like, disgusting. He would insert a rat into them. They would just like tie you up in like a weird position and just hang you for like 2 days. Not by the neck, but just where you're just out in the sun, just hanging like 20 feet in the air for like just 2 days. No water, no, like, in the hot sun. Just ridiculous stuff like that. Just disgusting behavior. And you have all these people claiming that they're Christians, fawning over those glory days, because they pretend that, that back then, oh, you only had to worry about getting tortured if you were a drug dealer or a commie. Well, first of all, that's still wrong. Even if it was, and I don't believe it was just drug dealers and commies getting tortured. Okay, but even this weird hypothetical, let's say it was, it's still wrong. Okay, and it's just weird that you would think that's a Christian value. It's not biblical, and it's just disgusting. And and so ever since Bolsonaro ran for president the first time, and all these neo-Pentecostals and more radical Catholics and bunch of Calvinists and stuff, like supported him and basically said that it was like a fight between Christianity and family values and stuff against communism. Okay, and let me tell you something about the military dictatorship. In 1964, with the help of the United States and the United States CIA, military generals in Brazil overthrew a guy who was like democratically elected to be president, and they installed like a 20-year dictatorship, and they did it because they created this scare tactic that they thought was, like 1964. That's like during the middle of like the Cold War between U.S. and Russia, and the crazy right in Brazil, like the real kind of fascist type right. They claimed that they had to protect democracy in Brazil, and that if they didn't do a military coup, that Brazil was going to turn into like Cuba. Okay, that was their. That's basically what they said. It said, if we don't do this, we're going to turn into Cuba. And so they overthrew the guy who was elected to be president at the time, and just installed a brutal dictatorship. And then, anybody that complained, they labeled a communist and basically an enemy of the state. Okay. Let me get away from the noise. And now Bolsonaro, like, his crazy supporters, some of them, literally think he's God. I mean, I've seen videos of people just, basically worshiping him like he's God and saying that he's the promised Messiah. I mean, what in the world? Doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And like you, and his biggest proponents are people who go around saying that they're Christians, okay? And the vast majority of them just believe in work salvation. They're pseudo-Christians. They're not even saved. You know, they can't even tell you why Jesus died. You know, and, you know, they also believe in that false doctrine of dominionism where they think you have to take over, you know, they think you have to, like, take over the world or Jesus won't come back. That's not biblical, okay? And a bunch of these idiots, of course, you know, can't rightly divide the word of truth. So when they look at stuff in the Old Testament about Israel, about taking the land and stuff, they think that's talking to them. You know, even though it was about the literal nation of Israel. And so that's what I kind of have to deal with around here now is, you know, like if I tell people I'm a Christian, a lot of them, you know, a lot of them just default and automatically believe that, you know, that I'm like some supporter of a guy that wants to go back to torturing people and having a dictatorship. Okay, so you know, I was even talking to this girl, and you know, the girl who gave me they'll kill my, you know, my that dog right there. Okay, I think I got him on camera, right? Bell, right? But you know, she told me like she told me just a while back, like the first time when she first heard I was a Christian, like she was afraid of me. Okay, and then I forgot exactly what happened, but you know, I think I just told her I was going to vote for Lula or something, and then we started talking, like, but anyways, like, you know, she, she said basically, you know, she said it's extremely rare in Brazil right now where somebody says that they're a Christian that doesn't defend Bolsonaro. Okay, and look, Bolsonaro he's indefensible. Okay, and this whole thing about you got to take back your look, Christians are strangers and pilgrims in the world. Okay, it's the, you know, the countries that we live in aren't our countries if you're saved. Okay, you know, our citizenships of heaven. You know, we're ambassadors of Jesus Christ. Okay, we should look at this entire world as foreign soil to us. And because we're ambassadors of Jesus Christ, we're supposed to reconcile people unto God, right? We're supposed to preach them the gospel, and we're supposed to tell them about grace, not, you know, support a torturer and, you know, try to overthrow governments and stuff. And, you know, defend, in some cases, genocide, because, I mean, that's another thing Bolsonaro fawns over is, you know, certain groups just being exterminated. Okay. And he definitely is a fascist. And people, you know, also when I call like Trump a fascist, like some people get offended. They think I'm just like just being woke or something. But if you actually study, you know, fascist ideology, I mean, it you know, people like Trump and Bolsonaro, they just fit it to a glove, man. You know, they're right at home with that stuff. And it I did vote for Lula. Voting's mandatory here in Brazil. Though you know you could vote annulled if you want to. But after I just saw how crazy Bolsonaro really was, hearing about him more living here, and just seeing the clear proof that the guy's just, you know, he wants to be a dictator. He wants to bring back torture chambers. Okay. He wants people to be like, I mean, he's talked about this on camera. This isn't like some conspiracy theory. Like, it's well documented. Him on television talking about this stuff, and instigating violence and all this stuff. And when I was a kid, Lula was president. Okay, and he was president for 8 years. And no, Brazil didn't turn into Cuba or Venezuela or North Korea or something. Okay, and when he finished his second term, he stepped down. Like, he didn't try to overthrow the government. He didn't open up concentration camps like people are talking about now. Okay, like the Bolsonaro people think Lula's literally going to throw them into all these well, he didn't do that when he was president, so it's ridiculous. I may not like everything Lula does, but if it's between him and a guy that literally is in favor of torturing people in his own country, okay, and wishes him in the military just ran everything, like it was a really easy choice to vote for Lula. Okay, really easy. Because the other option was just terrible. Like, it was literally a possibility of losing a bunch of freedoms, if Bolsonaro got reelected. So, look, if you're a Christian, please do not support, people in favor of mass murder and say that they're defending Christian values. Okay. Like I said, most of the people who follow people like Trump, and look, and Bolsonaro, Trump's a fascist, but Bolsonaro was like way more open with his fascism. Like, Trump, you might have to know what fascism is to understand, what Trump was saying and that stuff. But Bolsonaro, he's just wide in the open, basically. Hey, let's bring back the torture chambers. Hey, let's, I'm in favor of dictatorship. Oh, the greatest tragedy of the dictatorship is that we didn't kill more commies. Another thing he said is that this country's not going to change unless you kill, what do you say, like 30,000, or like 30 or 50,000 people, or 30,000 people, or something like that. It's just, stuff he said in the past, or some of this stuff he did reiterate while he was president and or running for president. But he never said, hey, I was crazy, that was wrong. Like, and let me tell you something, there's a crazy right wing in America too. And, it wouldn't surprise me if they just keep defending Bolsonaro. And that should tell you something about them, because they're literally defending. Oh, and by the way, when Bolsonaro was actually in the military when he was younger,
he got kicked out of the military for terrorism, basically, because he tried to bomb some military building like while he was in the military. So, you know, it's just ironic that he claims to be like loving the military when he even tried to bomb a building, but of the military. But look, you know, the right wing in America, that's also what they want. They want to be allowed to torture people, and basically have a dictatorship, and you know, quench the liberties of certain people. And also, like, if you allow a radical right in any country, you know, there's a possibility of a radical left coming out to combat them eventually, right? And then you're going to have two radical sides, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Okay. You know, and it sucks because, you know, as a Christian, I just want the government to leave me alone. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, I really don't like really getting too political. But sometimes it's like they try to force you into it, and they force you to decide. It's like, hey, do you want a guy that's? I mean, Lula called himself a refined socialist. Like, you know, personally, as long as he's not a commie, I don't care. I don't believe he's a commie. He's never tried to, you know, take away people's houses and stuff. You know, communists don't believe in property rights. But yeah, you know, if it's between a refined socialist or, you know, a guy openly in favor of dictatorship and, you know, torture camps, I mean, it's really like it's really not that hard to vote for the socialist. Okay, I don't care if I get stick for that. And plus, also, you know, I figured, you know, if Lula gets too, you know, I don't think he's going to get too like extreme, but if he did, I believe the Brazilian Congress would just stop him. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm just looking at my dog up there. He just climbed he just climbed up there. But anyways, and you know, and then Lula's 70 years old, and he did say this is the last time he's going to be president. He just doesn't want to run anymore. But I mean, even if he changed his mind, you know, I, you know, would you rather have a guy in his 70s that has shown no signs of wanting to, like, you know, shred your rights and open up a bunch of torture chambers? Or would you rather have the guy who I think's like at least 15 years younger that you know, wants a military dictatorship, and his supporters like want him to be a dictator. Like, they're calling for him to be a dictator. They've been calling for it for like at least a couple years, openly. You know, and for at least a couple years while he was president, he baited his supporters to shut down the Supreme Court and the Congress and stuff, and you know, just very openly. So, no, like I do not want a tyrant in favor of torturing people, making speeches like Goebbels. I mean, you know, that's another story. But you know, He literally did that while he was president. He made, but let me not get into that. And also surprisingly, in a country that's very, racially mixed, right? Now there's like a growing neo-Nazi movement here, more in the southern states, but they also love Bolsonaro. So, but that's kind of shocking too, because Brazil is more racially mixed than the United States. But anyways, you could pray that I guess that Bolsonaro gets arrested too, because I really don't think this is over. I mean, he still has some of his people like in the Brazilian military, in the police, in the military police, which is different as well, but here in Brazil. But so and he's just eating KFC in Orlando and hanging out at Publix. I've seen like it's really weird. But he's just hanging out there in Florida. And pray that, next time I try giving the gospel to somebody who, doesn't have a church background or anything like that, just, pray that they don't think I'm a terrorist. because of those Bolsotards. And just the garbage they've been spewing for 4 years. Anyways, take care.